Apologies for my tardiness. This was supposed to be going live at 2 o'clock, but then I got caught on another call, which meant that I've had to push this back till now. So we are about 30 minutes late, but we are here. And my apologies. But I just wanted to, yeah, jump on and have a little conversation about something I've just seen in the news earlier today. Um, and to be honest, I just want to give some views first and foremost and explore what's happening. Because when you consider the fact that there are so many people who are struggling to get on the poverty ladder, and in particularly in a place like London where house prices are so expensive, this is the last kind of situation you would expect to find yourself in where you buy a house, you buy a flat, I should say, and because of building issues, your money's down the pan. And it's pretty staggering. I want to ask who's actually to blame here. There are certain things in the mortgage process that you would have hoped would have picked up the fact that this was going to be an issue for them, but hey, it hasn't. But anyway, let me just share this with you because it is a pretty incredible story. Then we'll talk through some finer bits and pieces. And interestingly, I want to have a look at one of the companies that was involved in this as well. But take a look at this. So this is Camden leaseholders basically say my £850,000 new build flat is now worthless. Now imagine, buying a two-bedroom flat. This is for £850,000 in Camden. This is a very, very big purchase. I mean, poor guy. I mean, Jesus Christ. You would expect that your house is going to be solid. It's going to be perfect for you to move into. It's a massive outlay. He's probably worked his arse off to get to the point where he has the deposit for that, only to have so many issues with it. So let's see what's going on here. So listen to this. Living in a newly built block of flats deemed not fit for purpose by surveyors has been called a daily living nightmare, residents have said. Now, leaseholder at 53 Argyle Grove, this is in Camden, claimed that they spent hundreds of thousands of pounds in legal fees fighting insurers and developers. So we'll talk about the issues with it in a moment, but they're fighting insurers and developers. One resident who bought a two-bedroom flat in 2019 for £850,000 said the experience has been it's been life ruining. I can imagine that it basically has. What it says on here, and if you come back here, right? So look at this. So his name is Daniel. He says Daniel's added that the bathroom floor had collapsed. There was water damage, and window frames and doors had distorted, meaning they were stuck either open or closed. And it also says here as well that there were problems with the foundations. There were cracks in the walls, and the timber framings were rotting. So this isn't just a fact that there are small little niggly things that you can easily fix. There are structural issues, and I will link this article down below. But just have a look at this here. Look at that as your ceiling. There are structural issues here. And it actually says here, demolition and rebuilding should be considered, an independent surveyor said. It's a 150-page report prepared by the developer Prime Metro Properties last March, concluded the building was not considered to be fit for purpose. Now, normally when you apply for a mortgage, and I think this is really important because the question is going to be who's to blame here. Normally when you apply for a mortgage, you have to go and get things like your VIC surveyors or at least a valuation done. And what they should be doing when they're looking at a property is, number one, foundations, are they strong? Is there a risk of subsidence, a risk of flooding? Is everything as it should be? What it feels like here is, obviously, there's been a ton of stuff that's been missed. How they've not been able to spot that there were issues with the foundation, I don't know. So someone has to be held responsible there for sure. But obviously, a lot of stuff has actually been missed. Now, it does actually say here, let me just bring this back up again. It says here, we have serious concerns about the extent of structural significant built-in inherent defects that adversely affect the stability integrity of the building. And that's one of the last things that you want to hear. You buy a two-bedroom flat, £850,000, and you're worried you have issues with structural integrity. Those aren't small things. I mean, they're talking about the demolition of this entire property. And it's like the guy talks a little bit about mental health here and what it's basically done, and spending £100,000 in legal fees trying to find someone or hold someone accountable to this. But you can only imagine the kind of issues. I mean, just look at that. I mean, how does wood get rotten that badly? So he's saying here, Mr. Bruce, who claims he spent £100,000 in legal fees, said, "My future has been stolen from me. My money has been stolen from me. My mental health has been stolen from me." I mean, I can't imagine how stressful that has to be. I mean, how do you get the insurance company to pay out, and which insurance company pays out for it? There is another resident in here, fellow leaseholder and neighbor Alexandra, paid £900,000 for a three-bedroom flat in 2019. After being the first to move in, the 49-year-old said she had been left emotionally broken by the ordeal, which has left her paralyzed and crying a lot. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, she doesn't look 49. She actually looks phenomenal for 49. But you can imagine this is extremely stressful. I mean, I don't really know how you would actually deal with this. But there is a part in the article here which I do want to kind of like just highlight very, very quickly, because as it turns out, what I think has happened here is this job was given to a construction company who then outsourced the construction of this building to another company. So let me just find the bit here. I think it's actually further down here. So Prime Metro Properties said it did not build 53 Argo Grove and employed a third-party company, Site Construction Limited, under a design and build contract done to a standard that was not fulfilled. So these guys appreciate and they acknowledge that they've outsourced this to somebody else, to a third-party company. This company has not now delivered the property or built it in to meet all of the standards that were necessary with this, right? So what now happens? Now, interestingly, I did have a look at let me just share this on the screen with you. I like getting nosy and getting into things. So let me just share this tab with you, because I did have a look at Site Construction Limited as the business that was contracted as the third party to do this building. Now, when you go on to the main page of this company, their accounts are overdue. So the last accounts that you have here, the micro accounts, were from back in 2020. But as you can see here, they've been trying to get them struck off. And actually, this dates all the way back to 21. You can see here. But it's been discontinued now. So a compulsory strike-off has been discontinued at this point in time. And this is the confirmation status of the company. I think one of the directors was taken off. And this is the issue that you have when you work with a limited company or you outsource something to a limited company of the time, because it is a limited company. The directors of that business don't necessarily hold any responsibility. So they're limited. They have no personal responsibility for the work that they essentially carry out. And that can be problematic in this instance, because even though this company is and has been contracted or was contracted as a third party to deliver that block of flats over that period of time, well, it feels like to go bust. The directors, who we should be able to see right here, so a guy called Darren Mark. Well, unfortunately, that means that he doesn't bear any responsibility for that work because it's a limited company. And so the question now becomes, who is responsible for this? So there's a few people that immediately, in my head, from a mortgage point of view, when you're going through the process, because a mortgage has been taken out to purchase these properties, I would imagine, right? So there are monthly payments, mortgage payments going towards this property, which is now worthless because structurally it's an absolute nightmare. So when you apply in the mortgage process, what tends to then happen is, well, actually, you're going to get a surveyor, you're going to get the house valued, and then all that is then signed off. You have the national builders regulations thing, that the standards that they have to meet. So somewhere a huge exercise has been missed or ignored or just completely skipped over. Due diligence hasn't been done. And so where does the buck actually stop? First, you could label it at the surveyors for not spotting it, potentially, but are they going to pay out? Well, they're going to go back to the developer. So they'll go back to Primor Homes, right? And then Primor Homes will go back to Site Construction Limited. But at the end of the day, the buck has to stop with somebody. And as I see this, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not looking at this from a litigious point of view, but I would imagine that the builder who contracted site construction is going to have to pay for this. I mean, there will be insurance policies in place, I'm sure. So he's the leaseholder is going to have what, buildings insurance, right? Um, so the issue with that though is because it looks as though there are structural building issues, the insurance company is going to pay out because they'll say, well, actually, this should have been spotted, and you gave us this information in good faith. That's utmost faith is the term they use in insurance, and that is that you're giving them all the information that you have to the best of your ability, knowing that it's as correct as it could be. If anything then turns out to be materially incorrect, well, sometimes that falls outside of utmost good faith, and they can then use that as a grounds to decline any claim that you have. And this is true whether you're looking at car insurance, building insurance, content insurance, even life insurance, which is why I always say to people, when you're looking at insurance specifically, it's really important for you to understand how the policy works. So the insurance companies, even on the building insurance side, probably won't pay out for this because, well, they'll say it should have been picked up by the surveyors or the people who picked up the valuation and did the assessment of the building. Is the mortgage company, so let's just say the mortgages were nationwide, are they going to pay? Well, they'll then again go back to the surveyors because this is the surveyor's job. So this is just an absolute mess, and I can only imagine how stressful it must be to work to the point where you're looking at a 2-bedroom flat, a 3-bedroom flat, and you're spending almost £1 million. And this is one of the reasons why people, they feel as though it's not even worth it sometimes. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, look, this is an outlier, right? We don't see too many of these kind of stories. But nevertheless, I mean, this is extremely stressful. It must be horrible to deal with. I mean, can you imagine? You've got a mortgage of £500,000 on this property, which you were hoping was going to appreciate in value, which is your home. Not only can you not live in it because the parts of the ceiling are falling off and there are problems of the balcony, and your doors are jammed shut and there are structural issues, but now because there are structural issues, you can't resell it, you can't remortgage it because these structural issues have basically decimated the value in your property. So in other words, you've taken out a mortgage nigh on 850, £900,000, almost £1 million in debt without an asset behind you to prop you up. It's stressful, and I hope that they get this sorted. I really, really do. But someone's going to have to come to the fray and actually help. I think they are now getting the local governments involved in this to kind of push someone to take responsibility for it, but someone has to pay. Someone has to take responsibility for it. I mean, this is what you pay insurance for. The question is, whose insurance is going to pay out in this instance? But this is horrible. And this is maybe one of those stories of go with a reputable developer. I mean, even the likes of people like Persimmons or Taylor Wimpey or Barrett's or David Wilson Homes, sometimes they may not get the build quality right, but it's probably highly unlikely that they would have these kind of issues in a build. It feels like to me this has been, picked up by maybe a new startup company or a relatively small company who's then made the stupid mistake of outsourcing this to another business, and this other business just hasn't delivered the product in the manner that they should have done. And therefore you then find yourself in this situation where you have real people at the end of this equation who are out of money, who are mentally drained, mental health wise completely destroyed. I mean, talk about the lady who's 49. Imagine, I mean, you've got a £900,000 flat in Camden. I don't know what she does, and we don't know anything about her, but I would imagine that's quite a considerable asset that contributes to her net worth. Now, let's just say, for example, she's worked most of her life and she hasn't really paid much attention to her pension and how she's going to fund retirement. She may be relying on either downsizing this property or selling this property at some point in the future to be able to supplement her pension income. And as this currently stands, that's not going to happen. And this kind of leads on to another talking point and another, I guess, consideration for a lot of people who talk about using their property as the main source of replacing their retirement income is, well, what happens if something happens to your property? You know, and it's really really sad. And when you look at this, yeah, this is a headline, this is in the news right now, but I'm more interested in the the individual stories behind this. Like, stop the companies, like the individuals, the people who are in these places, who have mortgages against these things, because companies will try to limit their liability and try to limit their responsibility to cough up. That's why you have company structures, right? So they're going to do everything that they can. Insurance companies will try their best to not pay out because of things like utmost faith, all this kind of stuff. Because principally, with the way insurance works, you have to cross all the I's and dot all of the T's and do all the due diligence. If for some reason, like in this instance, something has just fallen out of place, well, from an insurance point of view, they'll say this is not my problem. And I think that's problematic, certainly in our society today, because that then ignores the people at the back end, at the end of this equation, who have homes, who have mortgages, who have pretty severe stress, anxiety, mental health issues as a result of this. We need to be able to make those people whole. And this is where capitalism and maybe ideology doesn't often meet in an amicable way. And I hope they're able to sort this out. I hope that maybe local governments are able to put pressure to get this sorted. But this is just a horrible place to be. But don't let this put you off, I guess. I will be doing a video shortly. I received a message on Instagram this morning, um, and someone just mentioned that they really enjoyed the book, but they had a question about, what if I don't actually want to buy a property and my choice is actually I would rather rent my properties and rent throughout my working career and not bother with purchasing a property. And so I had a thought about this maybe 2 or 3 days ago, and I've already been planning a video, but this kind of threw something in for me to remember. And I will be doing a video about how to structure your finances if that is your intention. Maybe some key things to be aware of and key things to pay attention to, because yeah, property is a nice chunk. It's a nice asset to have within your portfolio that will add to your net worth, that can be converted to cash, assuming things like this don't happen in the future. And if it appreciates in value over time, it's a really worthwhile investment. But if the barrier to entry is too high and you're thinking, okay, it's going to be cheaper for me to rent, although that is sometimes also questionable, what are the financial, I guess, controls? Or what's the financial framework to start to work towards? So I'm going to be doing a video on that, probably out next week. But look, I just thought I'd jump on and just do this because it's fascinating and also quite annoying, and definitely highlights failures in our financial system. You would think that the mortgage system and all of the checks you have to do would catch this kind of stuff. This is an outlier for sure, but it's crazy. And I think about the people at the end of it. But, let me know what you think in the comments if you're rewatching this at some point. What would you do? I mean, I don't even know what I would do. I mean, we don't live in a litigious society like in the States. I mean, if this was in the States, someone's getting sued. Someone's getting sued for a lot of money. And sometimes you think that actually that's what we should have here in the UK, but we just operate in a completely different society, in a different world. So who's going to pick up the fun for this? What would you do though? I'd love to know, because I don't know. I don't know how I would deal with this. It's too stressful. I mean, the thought of having £850,000, £900,000 in debt and not having an asset. Jesus Christ, that's stressful. Anyway, catch you later, guys. I will have another video out tomorrow as well on cost and fees, so watch out for that. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.